Rich Murray, set decorator for Only Murders in the Building. First of all, are you a big true crime aficionado like these three characters on the show?
Actually, I'm not, although a handful of us on the team are. I'm more of a comedy fan.
Are you into true crime now after this, working on the show?
I haven't yet had the time really to indulge. I've been it's been a busy 2 years since the COVID's. COVID
Well,
party.
so when you're joining a show like this, where like the setting is so important, not to say it's not important on like other projects, but it's like, it's in the title and it's like the murders in the building. These people are in this building and apartment solving the case. Like, what does that like put more pressure on you to make sure like the sets really pop to the viewer?
Oh yeah, totally. We had we started with Vintage Architectural Digest and a lot of period magazines and books. And so we knew we had to be very specific about what we were doing, both from an architectural standpoint to make sure it felt like the building here in New York, but then also from the set deck side, each character had to be so distinct and so well defined. So we were very much focused on color palette and texture and style. And so we, of course, with the influence of the sort of big designers of the last 30 years, or the big decorators of the last 30 years here in New York, we reached out to Carlton Varney and got some custom wallpaper. We reached out, we saw a lot of Mario Boada and Bonnie Williams, and even the Coco Chanel living room in her apartment in Paris, was a sort of a little bit of a jumping off point for us for Oliver's sofa and the symmetry in his living room. So it was a big challenge to make sure it felt like New York and it felt real, and everything was built. And of course, we were shooting this, in shields and masks and everything during COVID. So we couldn't go out on location. And when your two stars are in their 70s, it's a very big concern. And the health and safety was a very exciting challenge for us, in addition to managing these looks to make them look really great for New York City.
Yeah, it's definitely an amalgamation of those like classic fancy New York City apartment buildings that take up a whole city block.
Yeah.
Did you guys like just draft your own blueprint of the Arconia and like where everybody's apartment is situated? Because you guys in the show, they make references to like the A-line apartments. And
right. We had that all very well planned out. We sort of understood the architecture of the building and then shrunk it down to the long hallway and the vestibules that we could build. And then we defined every apartment by so Tim Kono and Jan's apartments were the same, and in the same entry in the same lobby. So we had and the story reflects that as well, because it's all about the mystery of where people are coming from and where are they going. It's kind of funny. Recently, we've all sort of gotten into the online world of the fan base and sort of the people following it, and it's mind blowing to me that there are fans who are just as focused on who lives above whom and in which line of the building.
They've drafted their own blueprint of the Arconia.
They're out there. It's kind of terrifying knowing that that every detail that we do. And of course, I mean, the biggest part of what we did from the set deck side was sort of all the inside jokes and Easter eggs and the fun and the joy of it being a comedy as well was sort of paramount in my approach and in the producer's approach and in the writer's approach. There you see these bits all the times on the fan websites as well. Like people freeze frame, take screen grabs and post about like the little jokes that they're seeing all over. And so that was part of the challenge as well, was to make it fun. And to make it interesting and exciting, such that you could screen grab it and see, there's a joke in the name of the woman who's, being waked at the funeral home, in episode 7. There's just so many inside jokes. It's just a lot of fun, especially with the guest stars that we did.
Well, like you said, like all like 3 of the main characters, Charles, Oliver's, and Mabel's apartments, they tell you so much about each of their characters. And like Charles' apartment is so clean and neat, and it's like a throwback to his Brazos years almost, like when he was doing really well. And he's also kind of like the blandest and like the straight man of the trio. And
Yeah.
Oliver's is like very theatrical, a lot more bold colors and gold. His dining room is like so over the top. And Mabel's is like, it's a work in progress, like
Yeah.
her. It's under construction. So can you talk about
Right.
like designing each of their apartments?
Well, because Steve Martin was so involved with his apartment, and he's a huge art collector and big in the art scene here in New York. We settled in on specific artists for him. Like there's the painting of the Alex Katz painting in his living room, where it's the back of a woman's head. In his apartment, obviously, it's about the women that leave him and his loneliness and his sort of isolation in his world. Then we also see another painting in the family room area, which is essentially sort of a throwback to like a Starsky and Hutch type of cop car vehicle. It was in his Brazos room where he had his poster and everything. So it was very specific about the art for him, and that sort of was also sort of a higher level or an elevated level of like the furniture was each piece was a choice and had a name and was designed, and then we reupholstered and did what we did to integrate everything. So his was much more of a carefully sculpted and assembled and curated, if you want to use that word. But like for Oliver, his story was all about his past. His space is all about the past. We gave him the backstory that his father was very involved in the opera world, and so he was always sort of struggling and striving to get to that point where he was as successful and as well regarded as his father, and never really got there. So you see the wallpaper in the dining room, but there are chairs and architectural artifacts from, say, like the old Metropolitan Opera House here in New York, scattered throughout his apartment. And then as a theater kid myself and coming from the theater, I had boxes and boxes and boxes, and Kurt Beach, our designer as well, we all had boxes of scripts and theater books and theater history that we just brought in, from our storage and brought it into the show. There was one point when John Hoffman, our writer and executive producer and the creator, was giggling with us because we had an original Time magazine from 1971, on Oliver's stage, and it was the review and the opening weekend of the musical Follies. So everything had a link to a history point where like we could consider that to have been Oliver's first show in New York, when he went to his first show, and it was like the first thing for him. So we had playbills and everything all over his space. And then for Mabel, of course we don't know a lot about Mabel, but we know her aunt was of wealth, and in the city it was a very much it felt like that sort of late 70s, early 80s kind of house, with a lot of bright color, a lot of fun and funk to it. So we left that up in the chandeliers and in the curtains in the living room and the bedroom. But then all of it was stripped back, and it really gives us a chance to see where she's going, I hope, in season 2. We're just started on season 2 now, but we don't know where Mabel's apartment's going. But with
She started painting murals and everything towards the end of the season,
right. So it's weirdly sort of like, how much is this just her processing what's going on in the building and her time in the building and her relationship with all of her friends, including her dead one, her dead friend. And so I don't think that that's going to live there, as but we don't know. It's only early in season 2.
Well, in the 5th, 6th episode, like they go to her childhood home and her childhood bedroom, much more decorated. And I think everyone's favorite detail is the cardboard cutout of Elliot's
That's
paper.
all scripted. All of that is all of the.
So did you just like order that off of Amazon?
I think we actually made it, but
you made it. Wow.
I think we made it in-house, but like we really took a leap with that room, because we're struggling with like, who's the 15-year-old Mabel then? Who's the 13-year-old Mabel? And how do we see that growth in her? And we only saw probably a good 3/4 of the room, but it was full of art and life and craft and just joy and exuberance that you see in kids' rooms. But from her, it was a very sort of specific layer of intricate detail that, you know, everyone walking into these sets was just blown away every time they walked in, because it was just such a level of detail that came, you know, started with Kurt and the architecture of the rooms and the spaces, and it started with the scripts and the writers, because John and the creator and all the other actors and everyone else was just so, we were all so involved, and it was always a mind meld of like questions and exciting, you know, dialogue back and forth among us to get to the right answer of what these spaces were and who these people are. And so we had so much fun with it. And I think it comes across that there's a lot of great energy and a lot of inside jokes and a lot of fun.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, so like, is there something, any of those details that you guys put in that didn't make the final cut? You know, just whether or not it was captured on camera or not, like just like a room or like something like under a table that you put in there and it just never made it on camera.
That got cut. There was one element. We did have a painting of one of the guest sort of stars, you know, in their apartment, that they had seen. Everybody was approved and everybody liked it, and then it became a sort of a joke or a bone or a point of comedy because it's a comedy, right? So everybody's cracking jokes on everything, and all of a sudden everybody was like, well, maybe we shouldn't have that painting up. So we took that down and we had replacements. We were ready. But a lot of times there are a lot of little inside jokes that people don't see until they're there in the space and they're sort of peeking around and poking around, touching things. We have one thing that Kurt did mention, Kurt Beach, the designer, mentioned in another bit, that we have a closet for all of Winnie the dog's costumes.
I mean, Oliver would have that for Winnie.
Of course, right?
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Yeah.
So we have,
Winnie's his baby.
Of course. So we have an entire closet costume for the dog. And the sort of inside joke that we worked into it was, okay, let's make these costumes all based on characters of either Steve Martin or Martin Short from previous lifetimes and movies. So we have a little arrow through the head, you know, for the dog in dog scale size. We have a dentist's outfit. We have three amigos. We have all of the, you know, Father of the Bride. We have a tuxedo for the, you know, we have all of those characters sort of in dog scale in place, and everybody giggles. It's just such a fun show and such a fun environment.
We need to see that in season 2, no matter what happens. More
I don't think I have control over that.
You need to go back to them after this and
yeah, it's really fun. It's a lot of fun, and everyone sort of gets that that sort of charge out of knowing that all of us, you know, from John, you know, writing the jokes in, and we're taking those jokes and dealing with them in a physical sort of decorative way. We're making them happen and come alive. And everybody sort of gets off on that on set. It's kind of great.
Yeah. Well, Rich, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time.
Much.
And wait for season 2. More winning.
Yeah.
We'll see you back in a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you.